This story is about a boy who protected the world using his barrier magic for 30 years. Instead of giving him a huge reward, people just throw him away without appreciating his effort. They think he was weak, but since he using barrier magic, even himself didn't expect to be powerful like this. Will he able to claim the reward he was expecting? After watching this, make sure you leave a comment. It all began when the Demon King defeated the hero and humanity cornered and gathered 100 barrier mages. To counter the Demon King and his army, they created a barrier against the demon realm during this time. Generations of heroes challenged the Demon King, but kept losing. They couldn't fight the Demon Lord, even how many they were. But 30 years have passed. Blake, a barrier mage, woke up. He prepares his clothes and goes outside. While he was eating his breakfast, the monster outside seems energetic for him because they are eager to kill him. He noticed the barrier was getting weaker. Therefore, he cast his spell to empower the barrier. The monsters outside were shocked as the barrier pushed them back, but he wonders because his barrier's effectiveness has been weakening faster lately and the required magical power has increased significantly too. He hoped a new hero would defeat the Demon King soon. Meanwhile, inside the castle, someone was confronting the Demon King. She wasn't scared to fight this monster, even she was alone. She all in her attack to finish off the Lord. The blow a powerful attack at the same time. As they exchanged blows, the Demon King was stunned to realize he lost their fight. He can't believe he got lose just like that. She was glad that she win their fight, so she wanted to celebrate their victory. So she ordered everyone to raise a victory cry, then a blast of energy as their war cry. Blake was surprised, as the monsters died suddenly, meaning someone had defeated the Demon King. Also, the miasma is disappearing. This made him realize the Demon King had been defeated finally. Seeing the miasma and monster from the demon realm vanishing, he assumed the world would be at peace from now on. Everyone can live without worry now, and since he was maintaining the barrier for 30 years, he was hoping for some reward. He hoped there was. 1 month later, a group of soldiers had raided his house. They told him that he is no longer needed. This surprised Blake, as he had no idea what they meant. The guy told Blake was wasting public funds on a useless barrier and making him money-grubbing fraud. But Blake trying to explain he was maintaining the barrier to prevent miasma and monsters from coming out of the demon realm. But they were acting dumb as Blake trying to explain. So they kicked him out of his shabby hut and he was expelled from their country. He was thrown away after they didn't need his help anymore. Blake spent his life for 30 years and he never thought he would come to this. So he had no other choice but to return to the village where he lived as a child. He goes to the front of the Adventurers Guild at Hatino Village to claim his reward for the job he did for 30 years. But he was only rewarded for a small amount. This made him wonder if this was his only reward for 30 years. The old man that rewarded him was surprised by his reaction. She doesn't want to deal with him because he is just a barrier mage. Blake can't live on like this even though he has been working all this time. This wonder him if the barrier class was really useless. The next day he has to work at the guild even if the pay is low as a barrier mage and he has no other job options. He was begging for work even though the pay was low because of desperation. The old man refuses as there's no work left for him since no one requests useless barrier mages anymore. Adventurers heard it, so they made fun of him to do at least some weeding or odd jobs because he is just a mere barrier mage. Blake was humiliated after all that he did when everyone needed him. Just a sudden, someone knocked at the door. These people looking for a barrier mage named Blake. They were surprised as the royal knight suddenly came into a rural area. Blake presented himself since he was the guy they were looking for. They inspect him if he is telling the truth, and Blake is anxious about what they want from him. They have come on Hero Alice's orders, and they were heading to the royal capital if it's okay for him. The kids that teasing him earlier were surprised Blake was invited to the royal capital, even though he was an incompetent barrier mage. Blake understood, and the royal knight apologized for the rush. They want Blake to get into the carriage they prepared. The people inside the Adventurers Guild and were gossiping if he was really just a barrier mage, because they might punish them later after humiliating him earlier. Since this was the first time Blake ride in a comfortable place, he feels so out of place. But he wondered why he needs to be summoned by the hero. He remembered from the past, he helped her once before, so he assumed she remembered him. They go to the Hendria Kingdom, a royal capital Mizden. He was amazed of how big the city was, and there are so many people, unlike the place he lived in. They finally arrived. Blake really feels so out of place, since he usually lived in a rural country. Then someone greeted him as he came. This was Alice, the hero that had been waiting for him. She asked if he remembered her after helping her in front of Demon Realm, which Blake agreed. Alice was glad to hear about it. She owed to Blake after he saved her when she got separated from her team. Blake just reasoned himself that he didn't do much because it's just instinct to help someone needed. Alice tried to invite Blake's companions too, but they refused as she think they were busy with ceremonies. Shin then began to ask Blake if what he's doing now as his job as barrier holder was already done. Blake lied to her that he had nothing decided yet, but the truth is he was unemployed because of his class. Alice suddenly asked Blake to join the Royal Magician Corps. One of the members got triggered, and he told that the Royal Magician Corps is the elite of the elite, and barrier mages can never be joined. This guy is Gunther, a 5th Division Vice Captain of Royal Magician. But Alice insisted him to join as she appreciated his effort to maintain the barrier from the monsters and miasma from the demon realm. But Gunther assumed he is just afraid of these monsters. That's why he didn't want to fight it instead. He added that barriers only have enough power to slightly prevent miasma, and even that can be easily prevented with magic, which means barrier mages are unnecessary. The reality slaps Blake, because 30 years ago, he were recognized, and to think their evaluation has fallen this much in these 30 years. So no one except Alice appreciated the hard work he did for a long time. Since Blake is already 39 years old, Gunther think he is too old for a job for promising young people. Then he added that he had no skill. Oh, Alice asked if Blake has skill he could join. Gunther agreed and egoistically said he should be enough to able beat him. He belittled Blake as he assumed he's too old to do this. While Gunther leaving, Alice asking Blake of what he will do then. Blake was anxious, but he got startled as Alice told that she believed he can win. This made Blake get more serious. They go to the training area to spar. This was Gunther against Blake. Blake can't believe he came this far after he just called in. Gunther introduced himself before starting. He charged his skill and said don't complain even if he dies. Then he launched the fireball towards Blake. As the fireball hit, everyone celebrated as they assumed Blake won't able to block it. Even Gunther was proudly lecturing Blake that this would happen when a mere barrier mage gets cocky. Suddenly he heard Blake's voice and thought someone stopped his attack. When the smoke faded, Blake was standing unharmed and wondering if the exam has started. Everyone got surprised as Blake survived his attack, and not only that, he also unscathed. Gunther can't believe it because he casts a spell that intends to burn Blake into ashes. So he thinks he went easy on him and decided to get a bit more serious now. Then he hurled another fireball, but it stronger this time. Blake used his barrier again to protect himself. Then boom, an explosion happened. But Gunther wasn't satisfied yet and casted a multiple fireballs like Goku. When the audience saw this, they think this was too much, because no one could survive this much damage. But inside the explosive attacks of Gunther, Blake was disappointed to their magic power being too weak. He wondered if Gunther's still going easy. Gunther was panting after getting exhausted of casting consecutive spells, and he wondered if Blake is already dead now. But his eyes widened as he saw Blake standing on his ground, still unscathed. For Gunther, this was nonsense as Blake is just a mere low-level barrier mage. He then realized he's just a trash who can only create barriers who specialize in defending himself, so he knew his attacks are meaningless. So he tried to confront Blake to try attacking him. Blake anxiously agreed to do that. Gunther was stunned to hear what he just said. unknown to him, Blake had already cast a barrier spell that snapped out of him. Gunther flew so hard as he got hit by Blake's magic. Just like that, his ignorance ended. Gunther's supporters were so shocked to see him blown away, and they wondered what Blake just did to him. They can't believe it because they only knew barrier mages shouldn't be able to attack. He explained to everyone that he just moved the barrier he made. Gunther doesn't believe him since the barriers are meant to be stationary and moving it doesn't make any sense to him. After 30 years of setting up barriers, he just realized this. So he asked the others if moving the barriers could count as cheating. Then everyone talking about their vice captain losing in barrier mage, and he wasn't even able to scratch Blake. Hearing it from the others, he got frustrated to lose in such a trash class user like Blake. So this wasn't good for him, so he plans to unalive Blake. Then he gave a signal from his underlings, which they immediately understand. They are planning to cheat while casting a spell right behind Blake while he is off guard. As the fire approaches, Blake blocked it instantly. They were startled to see it, but Blake was so dumb to realize he almost died. Gunther got surprised to see Blake's magic activated on its own. Alice, with seriousness in her face, shown the proof, but there won't be a next time for vice captain. Gunther understood Alice's disappointment once he didn't manage to kill Blake with his full power. Everyone panicked as everyone saw him casting advanced magic. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to use his full power. But even how powerful it was, Blake just stood up unfazed of incoming danger. When Alice saw this, she believed an ordinary barrier won't block it, but for Blake, she saw his potential when she was saved by him. That time, she can't believe a barrier-type mage would be able to do that, so she believed him he wouldn't lose from such kind of skill like Gunther did. And she was right. Blake easily refracted Gunther's advanced skill. He can't believe of what he witnessed. Even his strongest magic didn't work against Blake. Alice noticed Gunther's mana had been depleted, so she sarcastically asked Gunther if Blake had already won. She proudly announced that Barrier Mage Squad wins, which proves he has what it takes to join the Royal Mage Squad. Gunther tries to reason out, but Alice acknowledges Blake's effort for setting up a barrier in the demon world to protect the world for 30 years, so she thinks he deserves something for his hard work. But Gunther thinks there were other barrier mage beside him, so they must be deserve what Blake deserved too. But according to the investigation they made about the other barrier mages are not there, which startled Gunther. Due to various reasons, they either died or abandoned their duties while embezzling funds, while the other barrier mages groggily disappeared for various reasons. That means Blake was setting up barriers in the demon world all by himself after all. Blake finally realized that why his mana for setting up barriers kept increasing. Gunther doesn't believe it, thinking it was a lie, because the demon world is bigger than the kingdom of Hendria, and not a single barrier mage won't able handle it for a long time. He can't agree about the fact Blake maintaining a barrier of that scale by himself. Alice was glad to hear about it, and happy to see Blake proving to be more than she expected. Someone suddenly came asking about the commotion happening. Gunther was shocked to see him, because this was Lancelot, aged 29, captain of 1st Division of Royal Magician Corps. This was their first time seeing him. He inquired Gunther to explain what's going on here. But Alice interrupted and explained she recommended Blake, the barrier mage, to join the Royal Magician Corps, but Gunther doubted Blake's abilities. So Lancelot understands they conducted a practical test. By looking his situation, Lancelot thinks Gunther had lost their fight. But still Gunther trying to help himself by saying he's just going easy on him and it would be mature for him to go all out against a mere barrier mage. Lancelot didn't buy his pathetic excuses. So Gunther realized he was messed up. He came closer to Blake while saying regardless of one's title, if they have the skills, they'll be allowed to join. So he finally announced Blake as an official member of the Royal Magician Corps. Other members gossip a mere barrier mage join, but the others was fine about it as he able to defeat the vice captain. In Blake's thought, he can't believe he was allowed into the kingdom's top magician corps. So he wondered if someone like him, who's maintaining barrier for 30 years, could actually make here. Alice are so happy to hear about this news. Blake was humbly thanked her, then Alice wants to celebrate for their new member. But Lancelot Gloomy asked her if they had time for that. They head back to work while forcing Alice to go back to the headquarters. Lancelot noticed Alice's favorability with him, so he asked his relationship with her, and Blake replied they were just acquaintances. Then he leave a message for Blake that there are plenty of people trying to get close to the hero, and he hoped Blake wasn't one of them. As Lancelot leaving, Gunther stare at them. But this stare is full of despair and grudge. A few days later, Blake head to the Royal Magician Corps dormitory. He was looking for his room. Someone noticed him wandering an old guy at this place, and by looking at Blake, he doesn't look like a superior officer they've seen before, and his clothes are shabby, so if he was a commoner. Blake felt awkward, so he rushes to find his room. Finally, he found it. As he came inside, a guy named Sven, a new trainee of Royal Magician Corps, asked him who he was. Blake introduced himself as his new roommate, starting today, but Sven wondered why is there an old guy like him here. When Blake told that he was recommended by the hero and defeated the vice captain Gunther to join, Sven can't believe it. Blake knew he won't believe it since someone like him couldn't experience that. However, Blake noticed him being uncomfortable. Then he yelled as he thinks his life is over as an old liar guy on the same team as him. Blake curious about the same team he mentioned, so Sven explained roommates are put on the same team in the new trainee division. He apologizes for being an old man like him, but he promised to do his best not to hold him back. But Sven understands it's not his fault. He suddenly becomes silent as he observed Blake. He advises him that his hair is a mess and it will get in the way during the training, so he asked if he wanted to cut him. After a while, they finally finished and Blake feel refreshed. Sven noticed it's almost time for their training, so he told to Blake to change to his uniform immediately. As they were heading, they meet Therese and Clara, both new trainee for Royal Magician Corps. They are wondering who's this old guy as they never seen him before. So Sven explained Blake is on their team. Therese can't believe him because it's weird for them to have an old guy as a new recruit. But Clara was opposite from her thoughts, so she scolded Therese for going too far. Upon Blake's observation around him, he saw all the other recruits are young, and he is the only old guy here. Therefore, the ceremonial self-introduce finally happened. He introduced himself as Blake, a barrier mage. Then rumors had actually spread when Blake defeated the vice captain. Clara and Therese heard it, and they can't believe he actually did it. But Sven ignore it and focus on thinking he's weak because he is just a barrier mage. From afar, Gunther was also there looking at Blake, swearing he won't get away with this. The speaker told they are newest of the new recruits, so their divisions haven't been decided yet. The result of their training here will determine which division they're going to assign, which Blake understand that we're not officially enlisted yet, so he need to work hard and show results. For today's training is they will conduct a survival exercise where they have to hunt monsters in the mecha forest, and points will be awarded based on their performance, and they only have 2 weeks. Trainees are startled as they never heard about this before, and not only that, the mecha forest is a place with miasma pools. The announcer was fired up and asked Blake to quickly get his equipment and depart. While Sven was anxious to think he was dead for sure, as this place wasn't good for newbies to go. He begged to Blake not to hold them back, which Blake promised he will. Every team has a dragon carriages, and they are moving to each team's starting point. However, Gunther had evil plan for them. As time passed by, Sven are so tired from walking. Also Therese and Clara. They are wondering where they have been as they seem to had lost their way. They are curious if they go in the wrong way. Sven is getting paranoid as he thinks his dream of joining the Royal Mage Corps is dead and gone. But Therese scolded him to pull himself together as he was the team leader, but Sven told he didn't sign up for that role. While they were fighting, Blake tried to interrupt them. Just like an older brother, he tried to convince them to start by taking a look at the map to know exactly where they are. Then they realize he was right, so they take a look at the map. As they knew where they are, they proceed on continuing their way as soon as possible. They had no other choice, so they went. Their group continue exploring different kind of places. Due to long-term walking with a heavy luggage, they get exhausted, but they are still not in Mecha Forest. Clara noticed unusual at Blake. Even though they walk for a long time with a heavy carriage, Blake wasn't sweat a bit, so she assumed he used to stuff like this before. Finally, they arrived, and Blake think they finally reached their destination. The Mecha Forest had a bad vibes for them as they came closer. They were shocked to see the amount of miasma at this people, and by glancing on it, Therese knew ordinary people without any resistance would die in seconds. Therese knew the target was the Komodo dragons, a level 2 monster, and Sven looked at the map to find them marked on the map. Blake asked what level does mean which, startled Sven. He really don't know that. Sven explained monsters are divided into 10 levels according to how strong they are, and level 3 and up are so tough that novice mages can't hope to do anything against them. Blake was glad that Sven is very informative, which he proudly agreed. But Clara and Therese were leaving them without them knowing it. They explore inside the forest. Then something rattled behind the bushes that alerted them. These are the goblins. Sven took out his magic skill to take care of them all by himself since they were level 1s. He successfully hit a single goblin, but the problem is the other goblins that are lunging at him now. Luckily, he was saved by Therese. She teases him not to let his guard down like that. Sven was egoistically told he doesn't actually need her help. Clara advises him just to say sorry, which he did too. However, Blake are just standing and watching them. Sven asked Blake to help him out too, but Blake thought he could take them alone, just like what he said earlier, and Sven apologizes for his rudeness. They continue their way, a monster going to eat Sven, but it misses as they suddenly stop after Blake tripped himself. He apologizes for being lame. Blake secretly casted a spell. He then told them that he found a path when he fell, so he convinced them to go that, and Sven agreed to him. The spell that Blake casted earlier activated, causing the monster earlier to get killed while they are walking away. But Clara noticed it, therefore Blake asked them if they can hear water running from the direction he pointing at. They head there while the monsters are low-key creeping in. Blake sets up a campfire to make everyone rest for a while, but a beast suddenly appeared behind him. It lunges at them, but it was stopped by Blake's barrier. He used his barrier skill to protect everyone to sleep peacefully. Sven suddenly woke up as he heard something. He suggested to change their shift, but Blake doesn't want to do it and wants Sven to rest assured for tomorrow. Sven apologizes and thanked him for his kindness. Blake was happy to see he was appreciated. However, someone was watching over him. The next day, Sven noticed they barely encountered any monsters, and he felt like he's tired as hell. Clara also low-key noticed they only encountered weak monsters thus far, and then there's the rumor Blake took down the vice captain, so she wondered if this was caused by Blake. Therese think this was a good thing since they were exhausted just walking through the forest, and they would be in a serious trouble if they met a strong monster on top of that, so she advises everyone to hurry up to the Komodo dragon's nest. On the other side, Gunther wonder if Blake is already dead by now after he sent him to the worst spot, and even if they make it to Mecha Forest, Gunther lead their route in littered with monsters. And even they do make it to their goal, it won't be a Komodo Drago waiting for them. It turns out that Gunther sabotaged their map towards the salamander, a level 4 monster. Therese warned everyone that this monster can burn an entire village to ashes with a single breath, so it's better for them to run. But she got shocked as she realized they are surrounded. Sven feels so doomed. He thinks it's over for him since there's no way for them to beat these monsters. Clara and Therese also think this is their end. The salamander charges its spell from its mouth, then it launches toward them. Therese took a glimpse as she wondered why it's not hot. Blake saved them with his barrier skill. They were startled as the barrier is blocking the flames, so they wonder if this was made by Blake. The salamander didn't stop on putting fire on them. Sven thinks this was impossible to stay like this, because even if the barrier is protecting them, they won't be able to escape from here. However, Blake wants to go out. He told everyone that he will be back and they must wait inside the barrier. Sven was hoping him to get back as he promised. Then Blake proceeded to get out from the barrier. He assuming Blake would planning on making himself a decoy because there's no way a barrier mage could go against a salamander. Therese doesn't want Blake's sacrifice go to waste, so she advises everyone to prepare once the barrier disappear. Sven got mad as Therese planning to leave Blake behind, but she was just being practical since there's no way for them to defeat a salamander. But Clara noted the fire is slowly fading. Then the fire completely had gone. So they wonder what is happening. When they peek outside, they saw Blake instantly killing a salamander, all by himself. They can't believe a salamander was taken down in an instant. Blake noticed another salamander. It was trying to self-destruct himself. Blake immediately dodges it. He helped himself away from the ground with the help of a barrier. Another salamander was preparing to attack him. It hurls consecutive fireballs toward him. This time casted a different skill. He covers his hand with barrier to enhance his close combat. He charges toward the salamander and he able to reach his attack. Blake was able to land a powerful blow toward the salamander, even it was a high-level monster. Blake was done fighting these salamanders, so he thinks everything is fine now. He felt nostalgic at these monsters because he remembered killing lots of these lizardback in the Sea of Trees, and they said this one is a level for, so he wondered if it just happened to be a weak outlier. As they witnesses what happened, they left in a state of shock. They were amazed as they now witnessed how strong Blake was, and they are wondering how a barrier magic type could able to use an offensive. But still Blake was so dumb to realize how strong he was and think they are just exaggerated because he do hunt occasionally, but that was just so he could put a barrier around the demon world. For Clara to think that a salamander could be defeated by barrier magic, not only can he use them for defense and attacking, he also used them as footholds to move around, which she think amazing for his skill. So she realized he is not just an ordinary old guy. At the ceremonial, Gunther was sure that Blake should be dead by now. After he lead them into a difficult mountain trails, tons of monsters, and even leading him to a salamander nest. So he was assured there's no way for them to come back alive. But the speaker congratulated the Team F for the first time to return. Gunther got startled to hear they got back so fast, even in a place they supposed to be hard for them and dead. He freaks out why they managed to get still alive, and not only that, they are even in the first place. Gunther think they probably just ran away and they couldn't have brought back any monster materials, but the speaker was shocked of what they handed. They give the salamanders Fong that made them best result in history. Gunther was speechless to hear they easily defeated a salamander. This was a good work for them, so their points got tally, so he hoped for better work in the future for them. But they realize how could they got into salamander nest, since they only found low-level monsters during the preliminary investigations. Sven was proudly stated they were at the very top, but Therese interrupted his egoistic thought while saying it's mostly Blake's doing. She recapped everything happened. First, the one who defeated the salamander was him. Second is he led them on the path going back, and third, it was impossible for them if they just go alone without Blake. Sven agreed to her, but Blake was still humbly refuses their compliments because for him, the only reason they overcame so many obstacles is because everyone did their best, and all he did was give a little push for them. They're so happy to see Blake being so humble, even how powerful he was. But he is more confused as it was impossible they got into Salamander's nest when they are clearly at a disadvantage compared to the other teams. From afar, Gunther was frustrated. He wasn't satisfied with this, so she swore Blake will be dead next time. A few days later, they are now training with matches, so they must split up into their teams. Sven had a problem with the training ground as it was crowded, so Therese suggested to move to the second area where there are less people. Gunther heard their conversation, so he had another evil plan. Sven wants Blake to show his true ability, and Blake wants Sven to hold back, even though we know he is 1,000 times stronger than him. Gunther came in and giving them a help to instruct them instead. Sven wondering why the vice captain Gunther participating in their training, and Therese heard that he's only helping out because they don't have enough instructors. He scolded Therese and Sven for just standing up and gossiping than practicing already. Gunther wants Blake not to come with them. They proceed to begin the instruction, but the instruction he was giving is very harsh that they won't able to withstand. Clara immediately healed Therese after being so carelessly beaten by Gunther. He teases them to try harder, because if their opponent was a monster, they would have already died. Even they are beat down already, he told them to stand up as they aren't done with the instruction yet. As Blake trying to interfere, Gunther stops him as he told they are just being instructed, and they have to feel this way for being weak. But Blake knew what he was doing was wrong. Gunther wants to see Blake's frustrated face, while he wasn't able to do anything to protect these kids. Therefore, he called everyone to come after him. But since they weren't going to do that, he is going to force them with his magic. Then he didn't hesitate to hurl his attack. When his attack hit them, he then looked at Blake to tell that his friend has found himself in a troublesome spot because of his insults towards him, and he sarcastically told his hand went and slipped. He just explained he only giving guidance for these child, but unfortunate. It leaves some burns, so he wanted to wait till the smoke faded to check their pitiful faces. But he didn't know Blake had already put a barrier that protects them from his attack. This made him shocked to see them unharmed. When Sven focused, he can see the barrier Blake's did. Gunther can't see those barrier, so he wonder if Blake did something at them, but as far as he observed, he seems didn't do anything. The other trainee caught their attention as Gunther fighting against the Team F. Then he tried to escape from the danger, while saying they seemed to be at their limit and stopped the guidance. However, for them, this wasn't done yet, as he going to quit just like that. Blake was glad to hear this from them. Clara wants to win with everyone's strength, so they stick together to face Gunther. Blake finally relieved to see those face with spirit. They said they can still fight, so he told Gunther to continue his guide. When the others see their spirit rose up, they are getting more excited, and they even teases Gunther not to lose again. Gunther had no choice because he can't stop here since he had no idea what kind of rumors about him will start. Clara healed Sven and Therese, and they are going to combine their power and assure their win. Gunther also prepare as he doesn't want to lose from these kids. He hurled his attack towards them, but they just pushed themselves unscathed from his attack. This is the time he realized there's really a barrier covering their body. They began to cast a spell to finish him off. Gunther wasn't able to dodge these attacks. Sven was glad that they managed to hand a good hit. He got more even frustrated. They got anxious as they think he is really going to kill them. But Blake stepped in to stop their fight. The higher-up also stepped in to stop Gunther for what he was doing. He tried to explain he just guiding them, but he didn't by his flippant excuses. He knew he's trying to clearly have it out for Blake, that why he have been domineering Team F so much, and this was investigated. As a punishment, he was dismissed from his position, and he must expect a demotion in due time. Gunther was speechless something like this happening to him, so he blames Blake for everything he's going through. As they head back to their room, they talk about what happened earlier, and they knew there's something off about Gunther. Therese also realized he was bullying them right from the start of practice, and Sven agreed and think this is his plan to resent Blake. Because of what happened, Blake felt bad as they caused them trouble of something he did. Sven tried to not to blame Blake, but of course, Therese is practical and said he was right and true that he's the cause of this commotion. But the only thing in their mind is why Blake was so strong and he's different from the other barrier user. When he was about to tell them, Blake was called by a girl after being summoned by Edda, the Witch of Wisdom. He wondered why, so he had no other choice, and they postponed their meeting. Therese recognized Edda's name from the Heroes Party, so Clara really wondering who exactly Blake was. They head to Hendria Kingdom Magic Research Institute. Edda is a Witch of Wisdom, chief magic researcher, and she's glad to see Blake again. Blake agreed and glad to see her lively as ever. However, she was stopped by the woman who escorted him because Edda wasn't supposed to treat as a child after being one of a kind magic genius. Blake apologizes as he didn't know she doesn't like that, but Edda didn't care about it for now. She then stood up and told Blake the reason why she called him, because she wanted him to lend his strength to capture wild monsters. They received a news about a troublesome to catch monster from the wild that easily break cages made of physical objects, and these monsters also produce Miami, so the only way left is to research in their environment. but that has its limits. If they were able to capture monsters and take them back here to be researched on, then this will help them to find out more about their ecology, special traits, and analyze their miasma. Blake thought the hero's party is protected by the divine blessing of the goddess, so miasma doesn't affect them. That means that only they can enter the demon realm, where the concentration of miasma is extremely high. Eda asked if Blake was able to capture over level 5 monsters. When they hearing their conversation, they assumed Blake wasn't able to do that, but they were wrong and Blake told he able to do that. They think he is just a guy with ignorance to say it. Blake told that he can capture monsters over level 5, which made Eda happy to hear about it, but in reality, he wasn't sure about it. The girl was frustrated to think Blake is just being egoistic because he talked with Eda and trying to impress with lies about his abilities, because it's common in their world to judge a barrier mage. Blake don't think you'll have any trouble though, but she told Blake on stop lying. Eda interfered and already decided Blake will take the part. So Eda warned him not to speak any of this anymore or else she will regret it. They immediately apologizes for their arrogance. Eda advises don't fret about the magic core because in place of their training, she is going to apply for them to take part in the research. But the girl was still doubting and assuming Blake had gotten a hold of some weaknesses of Eda. So she won't let her guard down and swore to protect Eda at all cost. Blake suddenly feels chills as he have a bad feeling about this. Eda said they are going to the abandoned mine at Mount Berberin. They are now set off. Everything had set off for their mission. Eda was glad to see him again and asked if he already met the other girls, which he agreed, meeting Alice with high spirit as always. She also agreed for Alice, always like this. However, the girl earlier still observing and thinking why would Eda associate along with Blake, even he's just a barrier mage. Eda then recalled back when they were saved by Blake in the Great Forest of Death, because if Blake weren't there, she would be dead for sure. On that day, he was hunting in the demon side of the Great Forest, and he ran into Alice by chance when she was being attacked by a monster, so he helped her. Here's some flashback on that day. After Blake killed all the monsters that attacked Alice, she begged for him to save her friends since they could be near. So he didn't waste time and desperately search his surrounding. And then he finally found Eda surrounded by monsters. Eda owes her life to Blake because if he hadn't shown up to save her, she would have suffered a terrible death. Blake can't take such praise as he just did what he did, which made Eda happy since Blake haven't changed one bit. Suddenly playful children passes through them. Blake feels jealous upon seeing these children playing peacefully unlike him. He lived alone and keeping the barriers for the whole 30 years. Blake asked her if she used to play around like those kids as well. She proudly told she's a genius mage since the day she was born and would never play with kids. Then she took a glimpse at those kids. She actually wants to play just like normal kids do. A few days later, they finally reached the abandoned mine at Berberin. Eda asked Blake to cover them in a barrier as they move. The girl that had grudge against Blake think it's impossible to make a moving barrier, but she got startled as Blake told he can. To prove this, he casted the spell to himself first, and show it to everyone as he go inside the miasma. They think he is just trying to show off, but they got startled as Blake seemingly walking fine and alive, even though putting himself in a thick miasma. Eda proudly said Blake's barrier are quite something, and since the dragon carriage can't enter the mine, they have to leave it here. They can't believe Eda had high hopes with Blake. As they got inside with Blake's barrier, they can't understand how Blake managed to make a moving barrier as they never heard of it before. But she ignore it and think it's only for blocking and nothing praiseworthy about it. Blake noticed there's no monster nearby, and Eda thinks the miasma goes pretty far in. Blake understand that the creature that's the source of the miasma resides inside, but Eda thinks about it if it could also be a curse or a natural phenomenon. Cursed objects made by humans and natural sources existing in ominous places are some of the awful things that can produce miasma, which can then produce powerful monsters that can also generate a great amount themselves. Miasma begets monsters, and monsters beget causing more miasma and begetting yet more monsters. The Demon Lord is the ultimate end of this. This means if they defeat the monster that's the source of miasma, all the monsters created by said miasma will also disappear, just like what happened when Demon Lord was defeated, where half of the monsters in the demon realm disappeared. However, it's not like all the monsters in the world disappeared. So if they can understand what causes monsters and miasma to appear, they can deal with it. That makes this a very important mission. Etta suddenly stepped in a rock that causes her to lose her balance. But luckily Blake was able to catch her. Blake asked if she was alright, and she agreed. He then offers her to give a piggyback if she liked. But this stupid girl interrupts again, scolding Blake for treating Etta like a small child, even she's a genius mage. Etta refuses and told everyone to continue their way. As they get deeper, the miasma is also getting thicker, so she thinks this must be the place they're looking for. Suddenly, a loud noise of hoof stomps. It turns out they encounter a minotaur. They immediately recognize this as level 5 monster. Blake wants to step in as he's going to catch the minotaur, but this bitch acts almighty to take care of it. They join forces to attack the minotaur, but the minotaur just screamed and all of their attacks got refract. They can't believe they didn't even scratch the minotaur. Etta said they can't capture it using the capture spell, so they have to rely on Blake. This bitch once again really start to annoy me, even I was just giving a recap. She asked Etta if she can capture it. These words startled Etta. Everyone count on Etta as she was the genius witch. She got irritated by this royalty thingy, but she had no choice than prove to others her title was fit to her. Etta stood up in front of the Minotaur. Blake thinks this is strange. She poised her weapon in front of the Minotaur. This made the Minotaur get aggressive, as it seems Etta challenging him. Suddenly Blake noticed she seems going to stumble while trying to cast a spell, as the Minotaur furiously going to attack. Blake managed to make a barrier to protect her from this attack. These crazy Gersels startled by what they saw. A giant barrier began to cover the Minotaur. Blake was trying to capture the Minotaur without everybody's help. Once again, this bitch wants him to stop from getting in Etta's way, but Etta suddenly yelled to stop her craziness. She reminded her that she brought Blake here to help them to capture the Minotaur. They are thinking the barrier is just gonna break, so she told everyone to take a look at Minotaur's situation. The barrier trapping the Minotaur and purifying all the miasma, and if they continue to make the barrier airtight, the monster greatly weakens. She never knew barrier could do that. Etta observes Blake barrier, and she realized not even a level 5 monster can scratch his barrier with this such sturdiness. And even she was a genius mage, she can't do anything like this with her spells. She suddenly tried to comfort herself. Afterward, they finally captured the monster thanks to Blake's help, so they are now returning immediately. She thanked him for his help and asked if he could carry the monsters for them like this. Then she proceeded to leave the area, but Blake was worried at her because she seems having trouble with herself. After their mission, Etta told everyone to begin the research on how to defeat the monsters. They put the Minotaur into a capsule-shaped barrier to start the research. She can't believe barriers are too convenient, and she didn't expect to transport the kind of big easily. She asked Blake if how long the barrier could maintain, and Blake replied as long as he was nearby, he can maintain it semi-permanently. Since Blake only did a normal barrier, the barrier will worn off as magic power supply has been cut off, and Etta thinks this is a big problem, so she asked for any resolution for that issue. This annoying girl suggesting Etta to recapture the Minotaur using her magic. But Blake took a piece of paper that has magic binded over it, so the crazy girl got startled, as he still had more surprises. He put down the paper and explained that the magic circle created to keep the barrier on the demon realm active, and it will be able to automatically maintain the barrier for a while. She remembered like this in the demon realm before, but she only heard of a magic circle like this, and the creator must be really into something. Blake thanked her, and Etta thought he's the one who created it. Blake agreed and told he did this he was only 9 years old. 30 years ago, when the miasma of the demon realm was invading the continent, the barrier mages gathered together but couldn't do anything. At first they put up a barrier, but they weren't able to leave, so he made a magic circle that a mage can inject magic power into it. If you inject your magic power, if a mage inject their magic power into the magic circle, then the barrier can be maintained for a while, and by doing that, they'll be able to take a break and get some food or something. So if they use the magic power of 100 people, then they should be able to create a barrier barrier that covers the entire demon realm, but in the end Blake was the one only left. Blake was glad to use a lot of magic power, even though it was rough, but in reality, he really got exhausted in the process. Everyone was shocked to hear about this, but as always, Blake was dumb to realize he was too powerful as a barrier mage. Edda also amazed of his capabilities. Moreover, they continue and start to cast the spell. Blake created the barrier to hold the Minotaur. This will help to suppress the Minotaur while he was gone. This should be good for a few hours, Blake said. He decided to stay while they were doing research for the safety. Therefore, she called everyone to start the research to analyze the monsters and their miasma. They began by Edda giving every single group of tasks. While she was doing some experimentation, it came to the point Edda, Blake, and the crazy girl left in the room. But then the crazy annoying girl excused herself first. However, Blake and Edda left alone at the room. She's told to Blake that she prepare a room for him in the research lab, and he can go back anytime he like, because she only need him to be there whenever she need to inject some mana. But Blake is concerned for her, and she replied that she must help the research advance as quickly as possible in order to protect the people who are afraid of the threat of monsters and miasma. Instead of leaving, Blake decided to stay here too. Edda was low-key bad for Blake insisting to rest. Blake tried to reason himself that he is just worried that the barrier might suddenly break, since this was his first time he'd used an injection-type barrier outside the demon realm. So Edda understood his intention and told do what he wishes. Then Blake agreed. 1 week later, the research still continues. Same thing happened again, where everyone leaving, Blake also followed as he wanted to leave a bit. It turns out that he followed the crazy girl to ask something. He asked her why Edda always only one staying behind. But she got mad as she think Blake being sarcastic and their affairs shouldn't get involved with their affairs. He just wanted to ask this because he noticed she's been doing her research for a long time, so wonder if is there any for them to help Edda. She tried to explain that Edda was different from them as she was a genius. That means ordinary people like they can't do anything to help. She added it isn't just magic, she's also an adept when it comes to research, and none of them are able to keep up with her, even though they try to do anything they can, but it only get in her way. Then she turned around and advises Blake that he had no any reason to stay inside either, so he must go home already. As she leaves, Blake just sighed because of the stress, so he head back to the room. He saw Edda already fall asleep in her table. Blake take off his robe to cover Edda's body while she was sleeping. A few more days later, after taking the research, their lunch break has come. When everyone was heading out to cafeteria, Edda just took out a bread from her bag. Blake tried to invite her since she was holed up in the lab the whole time, but Edda told she's going to her resting in her room today and apologize for having her stay with him all this time. She's convincing Blake not to worry about her because he must get some rest too, so Blake had no other choice. Everyone at the cafeteria were enjoying their meal. Unlike Edda, they had more fancy food for their lunch breaks. They were talking about Edda for being amazing to have such drive and dedication to continue researching even when she's alone. Blake was low-key listening to their compliments. Then the crazy annoying girl proudly said, if they just leave everything to Edda, everything will turn out alright, and she will become treasure to the kingdom of Hendria, so they must follow her for their guaranteed future. But Blake interrupted her, saying, I don't think that's the case. One of them got mad as they think Blake was insulting Edda. He explained to them that just because they keep praising her a genius or whatever doesn't mean they can just leave everything to her, which isn't something an adult should do, and he reminded them she's still a 13-year-old girl. The annoying crazy girl stood up and told once again not to treat Edda like a child, as she is the most talented mage in history, and not only that, she's on a different level than them. They all agreed, though she may look like a child. They assume she's already a mature adult on the inside. Blake agreed to her talent for magic and research, where she can rival even for adults, but this doesn't mean she's is one of those. He told when they are departing, he saw her looking enviously at the other children. Not only that, when Edda tried to confront the Minotaur because of the pressure they were giving, she was frightened like a child who doesn't know what to do when in danger, even though she's a wise and a kind child. And those pressure making her to act like the way adults want her to. So Blake asked everyone if they really say for certain that she is an adult. He even asked them if they ever had a genuine conversation with Etta before in order to understand her feelings. Then he frankly asked everyone if they really want to help Etta. This made them realize he was right, and all this time they are forcing Etta to act like an adult. But suddenly someone came in. It was Etta, and she heard everything they said. As they were leaving, Etta and their group just passed by without greeting her. Blake tried to call her, but she's ignoring him. Without leaving any word, she just go back to her room. After a while, Blake felt guilty for what he just did, even though it was right. But someone suddenly knocked into his room. It was Etta, and she wanted to talk with him for a while. Blake prepared a tea for her. Etta acknowledged her disturbance late at night, so she apologizes. She was startled as Blake put his coat once again at her. He covers her small body since it was too cold and he doesn't want her to get sick. She thanked him for his hospitality. Afterward, she took a sip. For the first time, Etta acts like a child after taking a sip of a warm tea. Blake sits with her to start the conversation. Etta wanted to apologize for involving Blake in her affairs during the day, but Blake understands her situation because he's a guy who stuck his nose where it didn't belong. She began telling everything, and it all started when she's full of enthusiasm, but as she started working with everyone, things changed when everyone started praising her as a genius, and all the things became easier. He understands this causes them to start doing the bare minimum of work. Etta felt stressful, has always been this way, and people around her keep chasing because of her. She was born to ordinary parents in a small village, where no nobles or magician in her family, but a completely average lineage. She learned language immediately after birth. She also read through a magic book that her parents happened to have, and became fascinated with magic. So this is where everything genius stuff got started. From that day on, her parents gave her every possible form of magic education, and she became engrossed in magic. Etta began to be acknowledged to their village, and became a prodigy of their village. But this fame forced her to act like an adult instead of a child because of the prejudice that geniuses must also mature emotionally faster. For magicians, research and combat are their true calling, as with everyone else, she was made to study both research and combat. She was only 6 that day, and she's desperate. This made her to live up to expectations of her parents and the adults around her that she's a genius and not a child. But there's a problem when she was facing a monster. She shivered as she tried to imagine herself in front of a monster. But Blake knew she was scared, and this shocks her. Etta asked if he already noticed it. Blake agreed, and he already saw it when he saved her before when she faced the Minotaur. Even though he's far from her, he could see her fear from her pose. She even hesitates to attack the monster, even though she can. Etta was glad he noticed this after being an observant. So she added when she was in the hero's party, the frontliners fought the monsters directly and only had to support from the back, so she managed to endure it. But she was terrified of monsters, and there's no way for her to fight them alone. Blake gets her point, as he also scared of fighting monsters too, but Etta thinks he doesn't seem to be it. He explains that if he didn't fight, he wouldn't have survived, so he had no other choice, and fought every day until the fear became numb. Etta hoped she could do the same, but Blake replied she don't need to do that because Etta is fine as Etta. She's suddenly anxious about everyone's expectation for her to be strong and wanted to be a genius. She's determined to do her best in order not to disappoint everyone's expectation for her, so she have to be strong enough to defeat monsters because she think if he didn't become like this, she will be abandoned. Etta was too scared of everyone's judgment. She doesn't want to lose those people who follow her. But her worst nightmare is abandonment, and she doesn't want that to happen. Blake pat her head to calm down. He told her it's okay, because he will never abandon her, which made her heart warm. Blake understood her situation was hard, due to suffering so much. Etta asked him if it was tough, and Blake replied, "You did so well." Etta burst into tears as someone finally appreciated her without the genius stuffs. She hugged Blake and told everything what you want, like playing with friends, eat sweets, and take a break from work, and also to spend more fun time with her family. She rants that she loves to research but hate to fight monsters. So tries to comfort her by saying children are allowed to be vulnerable with adults, but Etta thought not to be like this because she's a genius. That's why she can't do that. Blake explained that she don't need to try so hard whenever she struggles or suffering because she can always rely on him. She asked if it was okay, and Blake agreed. Etta finally relief, as she finally can rely on someone when she needed. Afterwards, she fall asleep like a child. For the first time, she held someone's hand while she was sleeping. Blake pat her head, and he was glad he helped her a lot. This reminded him the past, back when he saved her from the monsters. He immediately took her to cure. After that, when he was about to leave, he suddenly noticed her noise. She looks like looking for something. Then she suddenly stretches her hand toward Blake. So he took her hand to calm down. Etta finally felt like a child she was when she's in Blake's side. She told him not to go and don't leave her all alone. Blake replied, "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere, Etta." After a few days, they head to Marketplace. Etta finally arrived, but instead of wearing the genius stuff, she wore a cloth that a kid used to wear. Since you reached this far, can you leave a like and comment below to help me reach further audience? And also don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button to stay updated on our latest uploads.